Do we want to watch a video about retro tech? Because I've got a few in the tabs here. One here about a rare twin-tape Walkman. And then I've also got some old-style stereos from Akai, old hi-fi systems from Akai, and Sony. Piracy's making a comeback, yes. Piracy is just, what's the quote? It's a response to poor customer service or something like that? Yeah, you know what? Let's do this. Let's look at the twin-tape Walkman. This is a good one from Techmoan.
Inside this case is something that I featured before on the channel, and in fact it appears in the Patreon credits section at the end of each video. It's a Sony WM-W800 Walkman. Now, if I was to ask you what makes this particular model special, a lot of people watching this will know that it's Sony's only twin-tape Walkman. This enabled you to do tape-to-tape copies in a device that could fit inside a large jacket pocket. Now, I made a video featuring this model.
Emphasis on a large jacket pocket, because this is portable, but definitely not pocket-sized. You'd need some deep pockets for this one. Can't remember the exact quote, but yeah, poor customer service equals piracy abound, yes.
7 years ago, but it's a device that still regularly does the rounds on social media. Someone will post up a picture of it and say, hey, look at this amazing thing from the 1980s. I've never seen anything like it before. And then someone in the comments will say, you know what, I think Techmoan would love this. And then someone will send me a link to the post to have a look at this amazing Walkman, and this sequence of events repeats every few months. Now, whilst it is an oddity, it's not really all that. Back in 1985, it really was something that very few people would have been interested in, despite...
Goodness, this is only slightly older than I am.
Being almost 40 years ago, I can still remember exactly what I thought of it the first time that I saw it, and that's because I still have this Christmas 1985 Lasky's catalogue that I picked...
Oh, Lasky's, yeah. I love these old catalogues. Always so fun to flip through these. Dang, that looks useful as hell, yeah. Instead of a big bulky tape deck and a hi-fi system, you can accomplish the same thing with a Walkman.
Up at the same time that I spotted it in a display cabinet in their St Mary's Gate store in Manchester.
I'm feeling old. I always feel old, Brian, so don't worry about it.
Manchester city centre. First off...
Man, that was a lot of money even back then. £159. Gosh. Look at some of these other ones here that we've got. You've got a Sharp auto-reverse portable cassette player with FM AM radio. A 4-band graphic equalizer. That's fancy. You don't get that. Oftentimes you don't get that with the Sony unless it's the professional grade or prosumer stuff. Auto-reverse. Also a feature that I don't think was available on the Walkman. And Dolby noise reduction. Well, most of these models had that. Then there was the Sanyo. 3-band graphic equalizer instead of 4 on the Sharp. Auto-reverse. Anti-roll. Sounds like some sort of stability measure or something like that. Metal tapes. Oh, okay, so we could play metal tapes as well. Adjusted for inflation, about £460. Good God. Do you want a twin-tape Walkman or do you want a PS5? Of course, these days I think I'd rather have the Walkman. Oh, look at this. An Iwa. Remote control plus Dolby, auto-reverse, 5-band graphic equalizer. That is a skinny thing too. That's incredible. 119 quid for that. It looks like the price to beat those with that Sanyo, especially if you can play metal tapes. And then you got Philips down here. 3-band graphic equalizer, auto stop, and a belt clip.
Its price was £160, which makes it the most expensive model that Lasky's stocked at that point.
Yeah,
It was
they were
also
proud of those.
understandably chunky. However, it lacked a number of the more advanced personal stereo features that have become quite common by this point. As you can see on this Iowa in the middle of the page, this one had a graphic equalizer.
Yeah.
It featured a slim design, auto-reverse,
That is a skinny one.
inline remote control. It cost £40 less as well. The Iowa was an object of desire for me. The Sony twin-tape machine was really just a bit of a novelty. Fun to look at, but you didn't...
And then you've got the bush over here. Super compact, it says. Yeah, I don't know about that. I think the Iowa's got that one beat. Comes with a carry strap and lightweight stereo headphones. If it's got to come with its own carry strap, doesn't exactly lend credence to the whole super compact bit. But, I mean, less than £20. Can't really complain.
One. Other than the novelty value, though, it really was quite a basic machine. It utilised two WM10 mechanisms sandwiched together. That had been Sony's smallest Walkman a few years earlier. Now, when I made my video about this 7 years ago, I did attempt to repair it, but met with mixed results. I swapped the belts and I've got the mechanism working well, but I think somewhere along the line the record switch got jammed up internally, so it was stuck in a record state. I'd always intended to return to it one day, give that repair another go.
Yeah, that's one thing you have to keep in mind. Second-hand Walkmans carry quite a premium these days. They become quite the collector's item, so be prepared to pay a pretty penny for those. But when you do, more than likely you're going to have to crack it open and replace belts. Because after about 40 years, most of those rubber belts have completely disintegrated.
But when I pulled it out of the drawer to show it in this video, I found that the whole thing was seized up again. Nothing on it worked. Occasionally I can get fast forward to operate on one deck, but that's it. But I'm not going to attempt to repair today because I've got an alternative to show you that you most likely haven't seen before. Before that, though, I just want to show you how the W800 compares in size to a personal stereo cassette player of a similar vintage that some say was the smallest model ever made. Now, I believe that this might have come out a year after Sony's twin-tape model, but I just wanted to show it here as an illustration of what people really wanted out of a personal stereo around this time. When you're carrying something around, the size and weight of it really matter. The smaller, the better. People will pay more.
And quite often you had to really make it count in terms of what you had on the tape. Because quite often you were only going to carry around the one cassette tape. Unless, of course, you were one to wear cargo trousers of some kind, in which case you'd have extra pockets so you can put an extra cassette or two in your pockets. Because it was either that, or you were carrying around a case that had all of your cassettes in there. Most of the time, though, you were making a mixtape on your home hi-fi, and then that's the one that you would carry with you and play in your portable tape player.
For less. This machine was sent to me a few years ago by a nice chap called Oliver. It's a Grundig BB900, although it wasn't actually manufactured by Grundig. It's just a rebrand of the Sanyo JJ-P4 and P5. Now, I do remember seeing a Sanyo JJ-P4 in white in the window of Central Radio in Manchester.
Oh,
and
quite
whilst
stylish.
I was impressed by its size, it was a little bit too stripped back for me. I was prepared to...
Always had a second cassette in my jacket pocket. Yeah, and you know, there's one thing that I always liked about Minidisc is that you could carry quite a few of those in like a jacket pocket or cargo pants or even just, regular trousers. You can, have an extra one or two with you. And they were small and light enough that they really wouldn't weigh you down. Same couldn't quite be said of CDs. Usually with CDs, you're having to take them out of the jewel case and put them in this, folding Rolodex-like fabric case that is still a lot more compact than a case for your cassettes, but still fairly bulky. So you needed a fairly large, jacket pocket to put those in. Mini discs, on the other hand, you could slip at least one or two of those in the pockets of your trousers, and they wouldn't make your pockets bulge or anything like that.
Compromise on having a slightly larger model that had all the features that I needed. And whilst I've been showing it here with this AA battery attachment on the base, this model could actually be powered by an internal rechargeable gum stick. And when it was in that configuration, with the AA pack removed, it was almost the same size as a cassette
Ah,
case.
perfection.
So yes, around this time, miniaturization was king. A twin-tape Walkman would only have appealed to a very small number of people who really wanted to duplicate tapes on the go at rather mediocre quality. It's not a massive market.
Yeah, carrying a CD case sucked. It's no wonder MP3 players blew up. I mean, it just stood to reason back then, didn't it? Steve Jobs was onto something with the iPod, though he wasn't the only one. I know for a while, creative people responsible for the Sound Blaster, they had an MP3 player. Couldn't really hold very much. At most, you could probably get 1 CD's worth of music stored on it. But still, what they were able to do with that, it was, at the time, it was groundbreaking. Yeah, if you remember this, oh, you were one of the few people that went with the Zune action. All right. Yeah, originally I had a Creative Zen that had a miniature wide screen on it. It was a fairly big and bulky thing, but it had a slot for the first generation of, I guess they were SD cards. And so I could not only play music on there, but I could also play videos. Trouble is, it didn't hold very much. Did not stay charged for very long. And very, very picky on the video formats. And oftentimes, I didn't have the right video format, and it was an absolute pain in the arse trying to get them converted over to a format that it would play. It's cheap, it was neat, I could watch my own videos without needing Apple's proprietary software crap. Yes. They've never gotten away from that, unfortunately. It's weird, I never heard of anyone breaking into cars for cassettes, but CDs wasn't uncommon. Yeah, that's a fair point. It wasn't so much the cassettes, but yeah, CDs in particular. Then again, when cassettes were popular, you didn't have as many people breaking into cars to try and nick things. We had more of a functioning society back then.
If you really wanted to copy tapes, you'd be better off waiting until you got back home, doing it on a twin tape machine, which had things like a tape counter, which is handy, noise reduction, high-speed dubbing, it can record onto chrome and metal tapes. There's a lot of advantages to a home machine over the Sony Portable.
Yeah, we had a Sony dubbing tape deck at home for many years. In fact, it was one of Sony's best ones. I think finally what did it in was a belt snapped, and we just couldn't figure out how to. We couldn't figure out how to replace the belt. Same thing with our old Technics. Actually, no, with the Technics, we ended up replacing the belt. There was a belt drive version of the turntable. The motor had burned out, and we couldn't source a new one. I had a twin player that did radio and record. I missed that old thing. I know, right? I'd give anything to have that one back. Or my granddad's old Kenwood. He had a Kenwood tape deck that was really good.
Plus, when you're at home, you're not burning through double.
I was shocked. Well, maybe not necessarily shocked. Shouldn't be so surprised. But JVC and Kenwood are now one company. Did not know that. But a lot of the famous audio companies have kind of merged into gigantic super corporations, like so many other things. Didn't know that either. Yeah, I saw a sign for them. I think it was one of our Japan walking tour, or maybe it was a driving tour video. It was a building that cameraman passed by, and it said JVC Kenwood on the outside. So yeah, Japan Victor Company, otherwise known as Victor, and Kenwood, together under one corporate umbrella.
Batteries either, but you can see why Sony only ever made the one twin-tape Walkman. They proved they could make it, but then they never returned back to this idea. However, while Sony only made one, Yes, it turns out there is another system, a second, far less well-known twin-tape personal stereo from around the same time, the RX-HD10 from Panasonic. Deck 1's play, Deck 2 is record. Just like the Sony, you can copy from one tape to another. However, this also features auto-reverse, as well as something else missing from the Sony, a radio tuner. Yeah, this is a twin-deck stereo radio cassette recorder. Something else it also does that my Sony doesn't is work on both decks. You'll notice the numbers for both of these decks are colour-coded. It's blue for 1, red for 2, and this helps the user identify which of the decks can do which functions. On the side, you can see a box drawn around the controls that are applicable to that deck. So Deck 1 just has play, as well as a button to open the door. That's a button, unfortunately, missing from my second deck on this machine.
Oh, no.
But yeah, with Deck 1, all you can do is play the tape. If you want to fast-wind that tape in either direction, well, it's hard luck. On Deck 2... you can do that, as well as all the other functions that you'd expect from a regular cassette recorder. Now, the only thing that Deck 1 could do that Deck 2 can't is accommodate a radio tuner pack. A tuner pack is effectively a...
That's interesting. So it's not built in, it's just, it's like a tape adapter. I don't know if anybody remembers the, those of us that had older cars that weren't fitted with a CD player. You'd take your portable CD player, and in the headphone jack, you'd plug in something similar to this. It was a cassette adapter, and you'd pop that into the tape deck of your car, and then you'd be able to play your CDs. It was, for its time, it was a clever bit of kit. And nowadays, I think they're able to do something similar, except fit it with, fit the tape adapter with Bluetooth. So if you've got an older car and it's still got a working tape deck, they've got tape adapters that are Bluetooth enabled, and that way you can just feed your music from your phone into your tape deck.
Cassette-shaped pocket radio, which has inputs for power and outputs for audio using metal pins. These pins correspond to connectors that are inside the cassette door. There is nothing for a playhead to connect with, and there's no spindles inside the shell. It is really just a small pocket radio, one that fits.
Very proprietary, though. I know with some cassette decks, you try and put something like that in there. Number one, it's not going to fit. But number two, if it doesn't detect like spindles or something like that, it just won't. It won't work.
It's into the specific.
Yep, seemed like wizardry to me back then. Yeah, and all it is just simple electrics and working with it, basically transmuting an electric signal into a magnetic signal picked up on the magnetic head of a tape deck.
Machines that it was designed to work with. The reason that I mention this is that often people see loose tuner packs for sale on eBay. They'll send me a link suggesting I should try out this cool gadget that seems to turn any cassette player into a radio. But unfortunately, that's not how they work. Each one was designed to function with specific models that have the necessary connectors and cutouts in the case that enable the
universal standards
that was designed to be used with it to be accommodated. You can't just put a random tuner pack from one manufacturer into a cassette deck from another. Around 1984 or so, I owned one of these Seisho personal stereos. That had an FM tuner pack, and you can see how the cassette door has cutouts in it that enable the tuner pack to be operated with the door closed. Interestingly, you can see that the Sony dual deck does have a cutout in one side of the door to enable access to a tuning wheel on a radio pack, and in the back you can see what look like connectors for the pins, but in this one that's just a blanked off plate. However, when the W800 was sold in Japan, there were metal connectors there, just like in the Panasonic, and that's because over in Japan, Sony offered an optional radio tuner pack, the CTP-1A, that worked with this model. But when this Walkman was sold internationally, they stripped out that functionality. I'm sure some people will wonder why manufacturers made radio packs rather than just adding the radio into the main unit. Well, at this point, an analog radio could still take up a considerable amount of space, and it was no doubt difficult to accommodate that into some of the Walkman shells. It was also...
Yeah, nowadays with modern miniaturization, it's not that much of an issue. But back then, they're still trying to figure all this out. It was only around the time of the 90s or 2000s that I think they really perfected miniaturization of a lot of these things, and we just got peak analog media. I know that for many people, the perfect like VCR did not exist until a certain Sony model in the mid to late 90s. But that was also the last VCR they ever did.
No doubt cheaper and easier, of course, just to
same thing with radios, same thing with tape players, everything.
On a twin tape machine, though, where one deck would be getting very little use for the majority of the time, so you might as well stick a radio pack in it. Now, because it's intended to use the headphone wire as the antenna, connecting it up this way isn't getting the best reception, but you can see it does work.
Yeah, that's the other thing is, where's the aerial? Because unless you're in the heart of a big city with a lot of broadcast towers that are still putting out an analog signal, you might be cracking out of luck.
Now, just like the Sony, the Panasonic model was powered by two double...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's easy to forget about the aerials. But yeah, without the aerial, no reception.
batteries. But another thing it has in common with the Sony machine is that Dolby noise reduction only functions on playback. It's not for adding on to recordings. Recording was also restricted to using just Type 1 tape formulations. The switch to select between the different formulations, again, is just for playback only. Although it's all a bit academic with this particular machine because I don't plan on playing many tapes with it at the moment for rather obvious reasons.
Oh, that sounds dreadful. Yeah, that's... oof. Way too much wow and flutter going on there. This... yeah, that's going to need some extensive calibration and cleaning. Yeah, time to fix it, yeah. And that's another downside to buying a lot of retro tech like this, is it's not just turntables that you had to account for wow and flutter. Tape decks had the same issue, which is why you would see a lot of audiophiles pushing towards higher grade prosumer types. You'd see a lot of sales of Technics decks because they had lower wow and flutter compared to just, you know, a standard Panasonic or Aiwa portable tape deck. Is also what kept Sony as the gold standard for so long, because they just got it down to a science. And it's also why a lot of the modern tape decks that you see out there, they really don't quite measure up, because so many of them are Chinese knockoffs of old Sony tape mechanisms that are just packaged under multiple different so-called brands, and they're all crap. You try to play a tape in those and it's going to sound like shit. Whereas you put it in an old Technics deck that has been well cared for, fresh belts and everything, it's going to sound much better. But, I don't know. Overall, cassette tapes, not the ideal format, is just the best we had at the time. But they were not the best. Someone wants to describe them accurately as the best format you don't remember. In other words, it's not as good as what you remember.
Yes, of course, after all these years, it needs the obligatory belt swap, as well as perhaps a bit of lubrication. Full service, really, but I think those are jobs best attempted on another day when I'm feeling a little bit more up to it. So that's it. In front of you are the only two twin-tape personal stereos ever made. One that's rare, and one that's even rarer. First off, got to apologise about the voice. I'm recovering from a cold and it's taking forever to come back. I hope it didn't disrupt your enjoyment of the video too much. Back in the day when I first saw one of these in the shop, I dismissed it as an interesting and fun novelty, but not something that I'd want for myself. Now, I had no idea back then. It was only in recent years I found out that Panasonic had done the same thing. Now, just because you can make this product doesn't mean you should. I think both companies probably learned from that, because neither of them iterated on it. They just brought out the one. It probably didn't sell very well, and that was the end of that. Now, in recent years, when I see these things popping up on social media, they've been framed a little bit as the thing that the coolest kid in class would have had back in the 80s. You would have been like the king of the school if you'd had one of these. Nah, it wasn't like that at all. Honestly, most people would have wanted a small, slim one with lots of features on it. There will have been some people that would have liked the idea of these, but I mean, it's a very, very small percentage, the people that needed to do tape-to-tape recordings on the go. And even those people, You're not doing that all the time. Most of the time you just want to take around a personal stereo to listen to one cassette, and then you're carrying around an empty cassette well with you as well, in a big chunky box. So yeah, I'm not dismissing them though, because the thing is, the products of the past, the ones that didn't sell, the ones that were a bit of a weird idea, that's what this channel's about. I like looking at things like that because most people haven't seen them. I certainly haven't seen the Panasonic version of this.
They are a rare find or a deep cut. It's interesting that we have them in their physical form and not just, you know, some sort of oddity in a preserved catalog from somewhere. Too expensive, unfortunately. Yeah. Yeah, some of these they're too expensive and it just didn't appeal to a broad enough market. I mean, like Matt here is saying, it's more than likely you would have wanted something a lot slimmer and just, you know, something to listen to a single tape and maybe have a radio built in, but emphasis on something you could fit in your pocket.
A year or so ago, and so I saw it on eBay, and I've had a bit of a search online, and collectors are quite fond of these devices as collectibles. But yeah, back in the 80s, wasn't really the thing that most people wanted. To me, they're a bit like a stretch limo with a hot tub in the back. Yeah, it'll attract your attention,
yes,
but you wouldn't really want it as your daily driver. Anyway, that's it for the
save
moment.
It for the special
as always,
occasions.
Thanks for watching.
A stretch limo with a hot tub in the back. I mean, that just sounds like something you make too sharp of a turn and you slosh all the water out. This one's a bit older, about a year old. Very good content. If you don't follow Techmoan, please give him a follow. It's so good. Because he finds all sorts of oddities like this. And you can see here, he's got a house just full of them. It's, you know, old reel-to-reel tape decks. I think this right here is supposed to be a, I think that's a standard tape deck. Or maybe it's a digital audio tape. Graphic equalizers. He's big on graphic equalizers. Looks like either a 4-track or 8-track stereo down there. He gets really autistic about all this, and it is just so lovable. Water sloshing everywhere, every red light. Yes. Anyway, there's the link in chat for everyone. Been a while since I've seen stuff like that. He's even found some like rare boom boxes like this one here that is radio, cassette player, and it is a vertical turntable, linear tracking turntable. It's a sharp boombox. This thing weighs a ton, but it is so cool that they managed to cram all of that into a boombox. That is so cool. Welcome in, Shuttergal. Oh, yeah. And then there's this one. This carousel cassette changer. It could hold 20 cassettes. And you just set them up and it just goes one after another. Or you can program a certain sequence for them to play. I think it's also got auto reverse, so it'll play both sides of the tape. Or you can just have it play one side and switch over to another cassette. But yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.